discriminating gamer, the board game review show that Victor Davis Hanson said was absolutely essential to our understanding of hoplite warfare. My name is Cody. Speaking of warfare, we're going to take a look at today at a game of fantasy warfare that's a whole lot of fantasy and a whole lot of warfare. I am, of course, speaking about Battlelore, 2nd edition from Fantasy Flight Games. Battlelore, 2nd edition from Fantasy Flight Games, 2 players take on one of 2 factions in this fantasy realm. You have the good, mostly human Dakin lords, and then you have the evil Yuthunk Yalin, made up of all sorts of horrible monsters. You thunk you gonna die? You thunk right. The Battlelore 2nd edition is based on the Richard Borg system of commands and colors, meaning there are 3 different sides of the board, and kind of where objects are really matter for how you can activate units. Now, there are several differences from some of the other earlier games. Like, for instance, in Memoir 44, you simply pick a scenario, set up a scenario, and there you go. In this game, each player has their own side of the board, their own specific scenario that not only has a side of the board, but also may have some unique victory point conditions on there as well. So each secretly choose your side of the board, you flip it over, and then you create the board based on both of the sides that you have chosen. Once you've set up the board, then you go ahead and you actually kind of build your armies. Each unit you field has a point value. You kind of build up to a set number of points and a set number of cards, and then you prepare it. Now, there are some specific army cards, got pre-arranged army cards that you can select, and you just build that army, or you can build your own that add up to that agreed-upon point value. You kind of deploy in secret, and how you do that is you have these little tiny deployment cards, and a lot of them are simply decoys. They don't have any unit on them, but you place them so your enemy doesn't know where you're building up your forces. So you pick your cards, you secretly select where you're going to put them down along with the decoys, and then once you've both selected where all your stuff are going, you flip the cards over to reveal exactly where you had placed your units. And each side also selects a number of cards. You get command cards, which is how you activate units. You select 6 of those, you look through them, you put 2 back at the bottom of the deck, so you start with a hand of 4 cards. You're also going to get lore cards. You select 3 of those, you put 1 of those back in your own unique deck. The game is very simple, will be very familiar to those of you who have played other Commands and Colors games. On your turn, you select one of your cards, which activates units in one section of the board. Your left flank, your right flank, or the center. And then you select that number of units to move, you move them, and then you conduct battle. In addition to cards that simply activate a side of the board, there may be other cards like Counterattack, which kind of lets you copy the last card played, or various other funky cards that will let you do fun and interesting things. Now, battle in the game is pretty straightforward. You roll a number of dice equal to the attack value of the unit. You roll these dice, and if it's a melee unit, it's going to hit on crossed swords. Or a single sword, assuming your unit isn't weak. A weak unit means, of course, your unit is down to just one figure. If it's a ranged attack, you're going to hit when you roll kind of the pierce target die. The flag, the surrender, the morale, that forces a unit to move back one space. If he can't, he loses one of the figures from his unit. The heroic symbol, that's the crown, that will let you activate certain abilities on some of the units you have. And finally, you can roll the lore symbol. Now, lore is very, very, very important in this game. Not that lore. Rather, lore in this game essentially is kind of your ability to do magic and special abilities. So you roll a lore symbol, you get to take a lore token. You can then spend lore tokens to activate some of your lore cards, which again let you cast spells and do all sorts of weird and funky things on the battlefield. After you attack, you go to your upkeep phase. First thing you want to do is check and see if you've gained any victory points. Now, there are certain victory point tokens on the board. If your unit occupies the victory point token hex, then you gain a victory point for that round. You may also trigger certain victory point conditions based on your unique scenario. You then draw one new command card from the command deck to bring your hand back up to 4. Then you have the lore step. Would you cut it out? During the lore phase, you can do one of 3 things. You can take 2 lore tokens, you can take 1 lore token and draw 1 lore card, or you can draw 2 lore cards and return one of those lore cards to the deck. So you can take turns doing these steps back and forth until one player has gained enough victory points to win the game. And that is how you play Battlelore 2nd Edition. Battlelore 2nd Edition is based, as I say, on that Commands and Colors system, which includes Memoir 44, Battlecry, Battles of Westeros, Commands and Colors, Napoleonics. So there's a lot of different iterations out there of this system, and each one brings something new and different and fun and unique to this system. Battlelore 2nd Edition is cool because, first of all, it has some tremendous, just absolutely beautiful miniatures that it brings to the game. You have these monsters. The Dakin Lords have the great Rock Warrior, the great Eagle. You've got the Chaos Lord for the bad guys. Really fun and interesting miniatures that have, of course, corresponding abilities and cards that beef them up to make them really a lot of fun to play with. And that's something that this particular Commands and Colors games brings to the table. But also, it's got that lore, those lore cards, which also, too, make the game a whole lot of fun. Because in addition to simply doing a conventional kind of battle game, you're also just playing these kind of weird things that are out of left field that can really screw your opponent up or screw you up when your opponent plays them. And that is a lot of fun. Needless to say, I'm a big fan of the Commands and Colors system, and I really like Battlelore. Now, I never played the original Battlelore, the first edition, but the second edition came out, I think, in late 2013. It's a whole lot of fun. I have really, really enjoyed this game. My only caveat with this game, my only, I guess, problem with this game, and it's not that big a problem, is this is a game that it doesn't take like a whole lot of setup, but the game isn't really long in and of itself. Once the game's set up, you can play the game in easily half hour, 45 minutes. These are not long games. And with the setup that's involved versus play time, because it takes 15, 20 minutes to get everything set up because there's so much going on. So there's that kind of ratio to set up the play time that I'm not favorable. That it's not really favorable. So what I generally try to recommend is if you're going to play Battlelore 2nd Edition, you probably want to count on playing 2 or 3 games, right? Because it's so short, but the setup's there. And once you get the initial setup done, subsequent setups aren't quite as bad, but it is what it is. Still, this is a fun game. This is a great game, and the Discriminating Gamer highly recommends this. The recommendation for the Discriminating Gamer for Battlelore 2nd Edition is buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and I highly recommend that you read Victor Davis Hanson's Carnage and Culture. It's just a great book. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm